morning, everyone. A warm welcome to our participants in the audience in the room and also the participants online. We are very happy to see you back. I am Raquel Lucas, I'm Head of Unit in DG Reform, and I will be moderating today's conference. Today, we will unveil the new topics for the flagships. So let's start. The second day of the DG Reform Annual Conference. Let me call on stage our director, Judith Roches, to join me here. Welcome, Judith. Yesterday's discussions was very good, very rich. And now we are keen that you open today's sessions, and we are also very keen to hear your takeaways from the first day. Judith, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raquel. Good morning, everybody. A very warm welcome to all the member state authorities, commission, colleagues, partners, and friends of the TSI. I'm still bringing the energy of the previous day, which was extremely fruitful and exciting, and it delivered a lot of very interesting messages about the impact, about the success factors, and about the future of the TSI. So it is my great pleasure to welcome you on this second day of the TSI annual conference, and today we are focusing on launching a group of new flagship projects for TSI 2025. This annual event has become a valuable moment to reflect, share good practices, and learn from each other. And your knowledge, insights, and the very dedication to the very concept of reform is the most important thing of this conference, and you are the greatest benefit that this conference has to offer. Yesterday, we had great discussions with high-level speakers on reforms with an impact. We are stronger together. That resonates deeply with the ethos of collaboration and solidarity that underpins the European project. It reminds us that the challenges we face are not insurmountable when we work together, pooling our expertise. By coming together, we amplify our voice and we leverage our collective expertise to drive meaningful change. Also, at the heart of our discussion lies the concept of impact. We must ask ourselves, how can reforms translate into tangible improvements in the life of our citizens? How can we ensure that our policies not only address the symptoms, but the root causes of societal issues? And crucially, how can we measure and evaluate the effectiveness of our efforts to ensure that they are truly making a difference? The challenges we face are vast and multifaceted, from economic disparities to environmental degradation, from social inequality to geopolitical tensions and technological disruption. Europe navigates a complex web of issues that demands adaptation and action. In this uncertain context, reminders such as the Letter report point us to the importance of leveraging digital, innovative, and sustainable investment to foster competitiveness, inclusive growth, and resilience in the face of evolving global dynamics. Also, it underscores the importance of boosting structural reforms of public administrations as an essential element of sustainable growth and prosperity. In a context where public administrations have in recent years faced the task of addressing increasingly complex and challenging issues, the report suggests the reinforcement of TSI, seen as a pivotal instrument to improve member states' capacity for reforms and boost the modernization of public administrations at national, regional, and local level. The report also calls for an increased and systematic provision of technical support and expertise by the Commission to the member states, and to facilitate cooperation and exchange of best practices in the design and implementation of reforms between public administrations. These messages strongly resonate with those that were delivered in the discussions yesterday, and the calls for strengthened and expanding TSI to be able to support all reforms across policy areas along the ideas of TSI by design or no policy without support. The European Commission decided 5 years ago that there was a need for sustainably increased direct support available to all member states to address their challenges and improve their capacity to design and implement reforms. Since then, the TSI has been providing support to member states to enhance their capacity to progress with their reform agenda. We seek to offer expertise and solutions tailored to the local context while remaining aligned with the regional and global context. Emphasizing the local ownership of change is a fundamental aspect of our partnership with public administrations. The TSI has proven effective in helping member states to fully implement EU policies, bolstering productivity and innovation, improving the quality of governance and public services, harnessing talents and skills among the regions, and closing the implementation gap of EU policies at national and subnational level. And in fact, at the heart of our discussions today are precisely the flagships of TSI 2025. These are designed on the basis that they are largely needed across the member states and linked to top EU priorities that the member states are in any case working on. These flagships represent a new chapter in our collective effort to strengthen governance, enhance public administration, and promote sustainable development across Europe. In conclusion, I would like to welcome you once again, to thank you for your interest, your participation, and I wish you all insightful and fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judith. Judith already said it. We will hear a lot about flagships. That's the word for today. And now I'm pleased to call on stage our director, Nathalie Berger, to present the next session. And now it's the moment to unveil the flagships. Nathalie, I believe that all eyes and ears are on you. We are all very eager to know how many and what will be these flagships. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Raquel. So the time has come to listen about what will be the flagships that DG Reform will be presenting, will be proposing to the member states for 2025. Judith has just recalled the context of crisis, wars and natural disasters that the European Union and its member states are facing. Multiple challenges that do call for a coordinated response, both at European level and at national level, and of course, notwithstanding the regional level that is also so important to ensure cohesion in the European Union. Now, our technical support instrument is there to reinforce this effort, providing support that is tailored to the needs of the member state. At the same time, with our technical instrument, we aim to reflect and respond to the key policy objectives of the European Union. The link between the member states' urgent needs and the needs that we have observed when going to the member states, when exchanging with the member states in the context of our TSI support project, and the European priorities behind is the idea that drives the conception of the flagship technical support projects. We introduced them first in 2022, and we have observed that they have been very successful and appealing to the member states. And while their uptake is voluntary, almost half of all selected projects under the previous rounds, including the TSI 2024, fell under the flagship projects. The development of all flagship proposals is actually a collaborative effort. We work very closely with all Commission services, and I would like to seize this opportunity to thank all colleagues from the other Directorates General who are joining us this morning. And we do consult the member states' authorities and notably interact with the national coordinating authorities to ensure that our flagships target the most pressing of all priorities at European level. Now, turning to these priorities, the European priorities underpinning the TSI 2025 flagships have two mutually reinforcing objectives. First, sustainable and inclusive growth, and with the successful implementation of the recovery and resilience plans as important agendas of reforms and investments. And of course, very importantly so, the quality of our public administrations as an overall enabler for successful policy making and growth. And you did mention the letter report, and you have all certainly seen in the letter report the emphasis put on the importance of driving forward the quality of public administration in the European Union. Obviously, a more competitive Europe will be able to capitalize on the benefits of the green and the digital transition to boost our social and economic resilience for the benefit of territorial and social cohesion. A united Europe can tackle the demographic challenges it is facing and can unlock the whole potential of migration. And I remember what Mario Nava said yesterday, talking about the challenges of demography and our Commission Demography Toolbox, that among the 4 pillars of action, migration and the managing migration was mentioned in there. In a Europe with strong, inclusive economies and societies that is future-proof and resilient to systemic shocks, no one should be and no one will be left behind. And with this in mind, we are presenting and proposing to the member states 15 flagships for the year 2025. First, we'll start with public administrations. Why? Because we are at times of crisis, and public administrations are the backbone of the member states. And this is why our Commissioner Ferreira, was very proud to unveil in October last year our compact, the European communication on enhancing the European administrative space, which aims to support the member states to reinforce the capacity of public administrations across the European Union at all levels. And a key element of all this is to ensure that public administrations do have the required skills to meet the needs of businesses, and I'm thinking of SMEs in particular, and of course of their citizens. This is why the first flagship proposed under the compact aims to support public administrations equip themselves with the skills required to face both challenges of today and tomorrow. Our compact is relying on 3 pillars. It presents 25 actions. Pillar 1 on skills, Pillar 2 on the capacity for the digital decade, and then we'll look at Pillar 3 on the greening of the public administrations. So looking at the capacity for the digital decade, a very important part of strengthening the public administrations is to digitalize the services, especially in the context of the European digital decade. Let's remember a few years ago, when we were all under COVID and locked down at home, how have the administrations been able to continue providing services? Well, through digitalization. And this is a trend that we need to continue to reinforce, because it will also contribute to the competitiveness of the European Union and the attractiveness of the European Union as a continent for businesses. So this is why the second flagship proposed under the compact focuses on strengthening the interoperability of public administrations across borders through digitalization, while preparing them to safely integrate artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies into their operations. And actually, we're already providing support. On artificial intelligence-ready public administrations, we have a flagship which was presenting last year, which is now being implemented, and we have several projects on artificial intelligence. Now, this new flagship will help reaping the benefits of the standards that are set out in the Interoperable Europe Act, which entered into force a few days ago on the 11th of April. And this is the basis for implementing the Single Digital Gateway Regulation, which forms a backbone of advancing the single market by providing essential citizen and business services online and across borders. Now let's turn to the other challenge of greening the public administrations. Throughout all the efforts of greening, strengthening the public administration, it is important to remember the ever-looming climate crisis, which affects all of us, including the public administrations. And public administrations should be at the forefront of driving the greening efforts. And so it makes sense to have public administrations making efforts to green themselves and contribute to the greening of the economy. Thus, the third flagship proposed under the Compact aims to help the member states reduce the environmental impact of their public administrations, promote the green transition, and help achieve zero emissions by 2050, making Europe the first climate-neutral continent. We believe that it is key that the member states lead the way in the green transition, and greening the public administration is not only a strong signal, but it is also a very clear way in this direction. Still talking about public administrations, let's move to this initiative that we launched in 2023, the Public Administration Cooperation Exchange, or PACE or PACE, and now I think we can say it, the kind of Erasmus for civil servants. Very important program, which was launched with a lot of success, and we heard it yesterday. We heard Minister Kerameus, the Minister of Interior of Greece, praising the interest and the added value of the PACE program. Our PACE program promotes cooperation and cross-border exchanges among the member states through exchanges of civil servants in the context of specific TSI projects. So we are reconducting PACE, and with PACE, we're also aiming to contribute to creating a genuine community of public civil servants that do not only build and share best practices, but also create personal connections that will help foster future cooperation. That is for, I would say, the group of all actions relating to public administration. Now let's move to another, or one of the most important topics, which is the competitiveness of our single market. And you remember the publication of the first single market competitiveness report earlier on this year. The European Union is facing an ever-shifting landscape of challenges. And in this context, we believe that it is absolutely key to strengthen one of the core aspects of the European Union, the single market, very timely, as we have just all read the Letta report. And the EU single market offers stability, scale, and a global springboard for the European companies. Now, the member states require further efforts and reforms to strengthen the single market, enhance the competition framework, and foster economic security in technologies and resources. So, through our proposed flagship, we are proposing to just do this, and in particular, support the implementation of the communication on the long-term competitiveness of the European Union. And by doing so, we can aim to create a better business environment for companies and improve the competitiveness of the European Union on a global basis, of course. Talking about business, to improve the EU potential for growth while maintaining our commitment to sustainability, we are proposing a flagship that aims to make sustainability frameworks easier to use for companies, including SMEs. We believe that this would enable the member states bring more companies, including SMEs, under the sustainability framework, thus improving data availability while sharing good practices across the member states. This flagship will enhance the usability of our green framework, thus contributing to the EU Green Agenda, and in particular to the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CSDR, and to the EU Taxonomy Regulation. It does so also with an eye on simplification and reduction of burdens for our companies. Now, for our companies, ensuring the long-term supply of key resources is essential for economic growth, but also for the protection of our citizens. The recent conflicts in the European neighborhood and the impact on the supply chains only underlines this need. Thus, we are proposing a flagship on economic security in technologies and resources, or resources flagship, it's ESTER, as we call it, ESTER in DG Reform. The support to be provided under this proposed flagship will include measures to enhance local production and critical resources, streamlining public procurement, and addressing technology security risks. And in particular, this will contribute to the implementation of the European Economic Security Strategy to minimize the risks to the resilience of the supply chain and technology security, and to the European Defense Industrial Strategy to strengthen the technological and industrial defense base. And it will also contribute to the implementation of the Critical Raw Material Act and of the Net Zero Industry Act. Another important need, concern by all member states, is the need to protect our climate, our environment, and our natural resources. And this is why we are proposing a flagship to support the resilience of natural resources. Through this proposed flagship, we aim to support the member states bolster natural resources management in line with European and global goals so as to protect our environment and resources, but also to ensure that these resources remain available in the long term. In that respect, this flagship will contribute, among others, to the implementation of the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030, the EU Soil Strategy, the Farm to Fork Strategy, and the EU Forest Strategy for 2030. And last but not least, in the area of the green transition, we are proposing a flagship to help reinforcing member states' energy systems. The past crisis has clearly demonstrated the enormous impact that energy shortages can have on our lives, and the importance of turning to greener and cleaner sources of energy. Thus, we believe that it is key to ensure that energy systems are fit for the green and the digital transition. This proposed flagship aims to achieve this through, for example, measures to improve electricity grid permitting, increase funding access for distribution system operators, and improving market design for the integration of renewable energy sources. In that respect, it will contribute to initiatives such as the very important reform of the EU electricity market and the EU Action Plan for Grids. Now let's turn to another extremely important challenge for the EU, the demographic challenge, and how to address it. We are presenting a flagship with a focus on this to aim to address the demographic change through helping the member states implement the required policies as proposed in our communication on demographic change in Europe, which calls on member states to develop and implement integrated policies to tackle demographic change and to mainstream demographic concerns into all policy areas. This would in turn enable them to create a more inclusive and a more resilient society that can effectively respond to demographic change in line with the 2023 staff working document on the impact of demographic change in Europe. And an often touted response to the demographic change in Europe is migration. This is especially relevant now with the recently adopted Pact on Migration and Asylum. This pact aims to address the issue of migration in a holistic manner, from migration management to labor market shortages. The proposed flagship provides a range of measures designed to be compatible with other sources of EU support, to support the member states develop the required legal and regulatory frameworks, as well as the necessary operational and institutional capacity to be able to implement the Migration Pact within the next 2 years. Another key concern that comes with the demographic change is the impact on health and health services. With this in mind, we are proposing a flagship to increase the resilience of the health systems through more strategic investments and through enabling the ministries of health and the health authorities to make better use of European funds. This proposed flagship on the European Health Hub will support the member states to make larger and more strategic health reforms and investments in line with the objectives of our European Health Union and the European Care Strategy. And it will enhance the resilience and the overall fiscal sustainability of the health system by improving the quality of health spending. Talking about spending and the spending of the public administrations, to further enhance the growth potential of the member states, we're also proposing a flagship to simplify revenue administration, thus promoting a better business environment for SMEs and large enterprises. This proposed flagship will support the simplification and the modernization of tax and customs administration systems and stimulate economic growth through measures that aim to reduce the complexity and the administrative burdens for SMEs. It is extremely important now, and one of the key priorities of our president, to reduce the burden on companies and this is going to help also to increase the overall tax compliance and certainty through cooperation and dialogue with the large enterprises. And it is also going to contribute to support evidence-based tax policy changes. So the proposed flagship will help implement, among others, the 2020 Commission Tax Action Plan, which guides the EU-wide action in pursuing a fairer, simpler, and more modern tax environment. For example, this flagship will support the implementation of the Minimum Tax Directive, the famous Pillar 2 directive, in force since January 2024. And in the area of customs, the flagship will help support the implementation of the Commission's Custom Action Plan of 2020, with particular focus on building more resilient, smarter, and technologically advanced innovative customs. Let's turn to the last flagship, the flagship on innovative public financial management. This will contribute to the implementation of the reformed fiscal framework as agreed by the Commission, Council and Parliament in the context of the Economic Governance Review in February 2024. This flagship will support the new framework's incentives for greater reforms and investments. Notably, it will help the member states to establish sound budgetary practices and develop solid methods for the integration of structural reforms and investments into multi-annual budget planning. Doing so, we hope that this flagship will contribute to enhancing the quality of public finances through modern public financial management practices. And as such, this will contribute to stimulating sustainable and inclusive growth and ensure medium-term debt sustainability. So you see a group of 15 flagships covering all areas of the economy, all across the board, and public administration. We hope that the member states will find a great interest. We had very positive feedback when we consulted the member states earlier in the spring, and now you will have the possibility, of course, to listen more in detail to what will be contained in every single flagship. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks a lot to Nathalie for giving us a tour d'horizon. We will have the possibility to go more into the details of these flagships. So by now we know we will have 15 new flagships. But how they are going, these flagships, to link with the EU priorities? That's the question that we are going now to address. And I'm pleased to call on stage my colleague, Head of Unit Yanis Adzianis, to moderate the discussion with distinguished 4 directors from Commission Services and DGs, and I call on William Sleet from the SecGen, Benjamin Angel from TaxSud, Silvia Michelini from DG Home, Maria Veronica Tovsak-Pleterski from DG Grow. Please take your seats. This distinguished panel also means that our cooperation with the DGs and with Commission Service is very important for the implementation of TSI. Without them, the implementation would not have been the same, and it will not be the same in the next cycle and for these flagships. I give now the floor to Yanis, and Yanis will moderate this entire panel. I wish you a very good discussion.
Thank you, Raquel. Thank you and welcome. Just to remember, in 2021, when the Horizontal Policies Unit of DG Reform was created, and we were asked to come up with an idea that would help link the TSI to EU policies that are important for member states, and we came up with this flagship technical support idea, which are proposals to member states each year. They have been very successful so far. In the 3 years we have been offering them, almost 50% of requests approved, linked to the flagship technical support projects. And today, with 4 Commission directors, we will explore how exactly the flagship technical support projects help the implementation of important EU policies. And we start directly with a question to William Sleeth from the SecGen. EU policy and law implementation is a critical issue. What, in your view, is the impact and importance of flagships in supporting member states implement such important policies? Is it on? See? It's on?
It's on, is it? Sorry, everyone. Thanks a lot, and I think it's a really good opportunity to say something about how the flagships are really sort of integrated into the prioritization of the Commission and the EU as a whole. I think we already got a very strong flavour of that through looking through the different 15 flagships and how that really plays into the development of these key policy strands that we've seen in the EU over the last few years, things like the Green Deal, the digital decade, and indeed the Pact on Migration and Asylum, that is an example where I think we've just had a really important legislative development, and we can now see how the legislative side and the implementation side really come together. I think for EU citizens and businesses, we always have to remember that these policies only really come to fruition, they only really feel the benefits of them when you have two things in place. The first is the laws that you need to give you the really kind of firm framework, and then there's the implementation as well. So on both of those, I think that we've been trying in the Commission to work to move more and more kind of upstream to look ahead and ensure that both of those are in place. So on the legal side, there's been a lot of work being done in order to try and anticipate potential challenges, or when it comes to law, a little bit more like that, to anticipate potential challenges when it comes to implementation of the legal framework. So we do all kinds of guidance, discussions in advance. We work with member states so that even when we do have a concern about a breach, we only have to take that to the European Court of Justice in only about 5% of cases, so that we've been working a lot on the legal side. And I think where the TSI really comes in very strongly in the flagships is then on the other side of that coin, on the implementation side. Public administration is obviously absolutely key to making implementation work, even at the earlier stage of designing and negotiating new laws. And so I think we saw from the list of flagships how embedded that really is in this prioritization of what we're trying to achieve. EU policies demand a lot of public administration in terms of knowledge, skills, capacities as well. And we all know that the resources available to the public sector are very strained, they're under limits. And so it's really important that we make the most of the opportunities and the resources that are there. And that, I think, is very much how the TSI can really come in and help. And in particular, through the flagships and through ensuring that that prioritization is something that we carry through from the conception of policies through the legal framework into the implementation as well. Just to pick up on a couple of examples, I mean, for example, on the digital side, I think this idea that we can help public services to become completely online, for citizens to have access to digital identity is something that started off as a kind of idea. We've got the legal framework in place, but we really have to make it happen. So I think that all member states have received support in that particular area, and there were, if I understand rightly, there were 240 projects. So there's a really kind of sustained effort at the European level to help the implementation at national level. Another example that we just heard about was the EU Health Hub. Now, there again, we have the European Health Union, a kind of general policy framework idea. And so what we can now do is to really carry that through. Again, we've just had a very important legal change in the adoption of the European health data space. Now, that's going to revolutionize the way that health systems work, the way they interact, and the way that patients interact with health services as well. It's a huge change, it's a real modernization, and through the EU Health Hub, I think we are really going to be able to help make that happen. And I think it's also interesting that what the TSI in general has been able to do is to be, if you like, light enough on its feet to help not only on these big kind of long-term areas, but also on the shorter-term needs as well. So I did want to say a little word as well about how was able to help in the aftermath of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I think that shows the other kind of leg of the TSI and how things can work together there. So it was helping to help 17 member states to identify reforms and investments to phase out fossil fuel dependency, 9 member states in helping to support those who were forced to flee Ukraine, 10 member states in helping to implement sanctions. And so I think it's this ability of the TSI to help in these different modes that's particularly valuable and really allows it to cover the ground of the different priorities that the EU and the Commission have set. Thanks.
Thank you, William. And another area, I mean, you've mentioned some of the priorities we've covered, but of course we've covered several of DG Grow. In 2022, there was a flagship on tourism. In 2023, on industrial ecosystems. And in 2024, on the Green Deal Industrial Plan. And we would like to hear from you, Mary Veronica, on how these past flagships have actually helped implement priorities which were proposed or designed by DG Grow and implemented by member states.
Thank you very much, Ioannis, for having us in this panel. Good morning to everyone. Indeed, DG Grow is collaborating in the TSI community since its beginning, and we are also strong supporter of the flagship approaches. I personally think that TSI is a sort of a driver or a bottleneck remover in implementing our EU priority policies at the national level. So, in very short, we have a very, very positive experience being a partner in these projects. Now, you have mentioned we had several successful flagships. Let me maybe focus on the last one you mentioned, on the Green Deal Industrial Plan. Natalie has explained already at great length why it does matter to look at the industrial side of competitiveness to make our industry able to compete at a global scale. And this was the reason and motivation why the European Commission came up with the Green Deal Industrial Plan not so long ago. And that would bring together a number of key policy actions, policy frameworks, what we would need to do here in Europe to keep up the competitiveness level globally of our industry. So primarily, of course, with the objective to make our industry competitive in this new world of net zero economy, and linked to that very closely to ensure the supply of critical raw materials, which are very much needed for the advanced technologies. As you all know, we are talking a lot about lithium, about cobalt, about all these things that we need to produce batteries, to produce electrical equipment, and so on. So that was a sort of the policy context that led us, together with DG Reform, to propose this Green Deal Industrial Plan flagship. And I'm very happy to say that there was a very strong interest also among member states to pick that up. And we had in the 2023 selected a number of projects that would use this flagship framework. Let me just maybe mention a few, because I think the proof of the pudding is in eating. So there is a Swedish project which looks into the green and digital transition of SMEs. William, you mentioned SMEs in the manufacturing industry. So that's very important because the objective of that project is particularly what we need a lot, I think, to support the SMEs to integrate, to adapt to this new evolving set of EU regulations. I have to say, without being modest, we had quite an important legislative cycle behind us. So now, of course, the SME in Sweden or elsewhere in Europe needs to sort of adapting itself to also implement that. So this is the project that Sweden put forward. And then we have also a project from Bulgaria that is the project to design a national industrial manufacturing strategy, mining strategy also. We have a project from Italy with the ambition to design a roadmap, imagine, to connect Africa and Europe for the production of clean electricity. And I can give you more examples, which I think are of equal importance in this green industrial deal. I wanted also to bring forward one regional project, which I also think it's a very unique feature and very useful approach that DG Reform encouraged us to, and encourage member states and us to put in place. So here I want to highlight the project in the area of the critical raw materials. We talk a lot about securing sustainable mining in Europe. That's a challenge. Everyone would know we have quite a demanding environmental standards. We have also debates in societies where these production capacities are located. So in the TSI, we have a project which brought together 5 countries and 10 European regions to look into the challenges that these communities, these regions are facing now, having mines of lithium, mines of cobalt, production of bauxite. So these are all critical raw materials. I'm not saying that now we will have all the necessary supply or all capacities here in Europe, but part of our policy is also to secure sustainable, to the extent possible, production also in Europe. We all know that Europe is maybe not most endowed with all these raw materials, but we have certain locations where there is a potential to extract these sort of minerals. And I said 5 countries with 10 regions came together, and they are now looking, together with the OECD, who is our partner in this project, how to set up policies to address the societal issues, the issues about skilled labor force, the issues about transport infrastructure, very concrete challenges that these communities, these regions are facing. So I think this is one of clear demonstrations how much these TSI projects can truly, concretely support our policy actions, which are with the objective to have European industry more competitive in the future.
Thank you, Mary Veronica. And another area where we have supported EU policy implementation is, of course, tax and customs administrations. And there in 2023, we offered a flagship on the implementation, linked to the implementation of the Directive on Administrative Cooperation. And we would like to hear from you, Benjamin, how did that flagship help implement the directive?
Thank you. The Directive on Administrative Cooperation is undoubtedly a major challenge for member states. It's a major challenge for a number of reasons. The first reason is the speed. You know that usually it's very difficult to adopt legislation in the tax field because of the unanimity requirement. But in the field of administrative cooperation, which is basically exchange of information between member states, we have had 8 directives in 12 years. So basically, we have a new directive every 18 months. And that creates a situation where tax administration tend to be 1, 2, or even 3 DAC late in being able to make a good use of the data they get. It's a challenge in many respects. It's a challenge linked to the complexity, to the volume of information that you get. To give you an idea, for instance, if you take the DAC, which is related to the information on bank account, those last 5 years, member states have exchanged information on 127 million bank accounts. If you take the one that is related to salaries, they have exchanged information on 37 million people. So we are quite good at exchanging information, but what we need to be able to do is making a good use of this information. We have to keep in mind, obviously, as regulator, as legislator, that collecting information has a cost. So we have to make sure that each and every piece of information that we get is properly used. For the DAC, it raises a number of challenges, and most of these challenges are related to having the right tools, very often of IT nature, to be able to reconcile those tools with the national data that you have, but also to be able to use the data that you get to target your action. For instance, to determine where to launch a tax audit. The field of the DAC is broadening progressively to new area. For instance, DAC 7 2 years ago was covering platform. DAC 8 last year was covering crypto asset. So there is also an intellectual challenge for tax administration of understanding the information they get, having the information of necessary quality to be able to act on it, having an information which is sufficiently precise. So the technical support instrument has been extremely helpful in giving a helpful hand in member states, and 7 member states actually have been using it, in trying to help member states to design the right tools to be able to make an effective use of that information. And we hope that the effort will continue, because that was a flagship of last year, obviously, and that the member state will keep on investing on having a better use of those data. Because we cannot pile up rules to get even more data every year and not having the right tool to use them. This is not satisfactory from an intellectual point of view. And the Court of Auditor itself has pointed 3 years ago that some DACs were well used, some DAC not so much. So we have to make sure, for many reasons, because we owe it to the taxpayer, because we have to do it also from a GDPR point of view. We're not supposed to get data if we don't use them. And because also we need to be able to ensure tax fairness by taxing all the people that need to be taxed and make sure that everyone pays its fair share. We need, for all those reasons, to make a better use of the data that we get. And the 7 countries that have received the TSI help have made substantial progress in this direction.
Thank you, Benjamin. Important to note that if we offer a flagship for 1 year, it doesn't mean that member states cannot take it up in years to come. And this actually links very well with the area of migration, because there it's an area where we have offered a flagship every year, and we have adjusted it every year to address the needs that were identified together with DG Home and with member states as relevant for that year. For example, last year we had offered a flagship on enhancing the reception capacity in member states, but previously on integration, also with regard to Ukrainian people fleeing the war in Ukraine. And with this introduction, Sylvia, I would like you to tell us how the different flagships offered under each year have helped the implementation of migration policy.
Thank you, Ioannis, and thanks for inviting me to this panel. I think it's Natalie and Judith in the introduction, I think, presented very well how TSI can actually help supporting the top EU priorities, and it's fair to say that migration is among those top EU priorities. And I do want to present some concrete examples of what TSI actually allowed in the last years, and you mentioned some of those examples. Because indeed, we often hear migration is a European challenge, which requires European response, and that's reality. And I think TSI gives a contribution in this part of this response. I know you are based in Greece, and indeed a lot of TSIs in the past helped supporting Greece, for example, in the area of reception, and I can bring some examples. Indeed, when we had the asylum crisis in 2015, 2016, one of the TSI actions, Flagship, helped exactly manage the situation, the urgency, contributed to helping the authorities manage the influx, the mass influx, of course, with the contribution with different helps, including, of course, from funds under the Home Affairs and also the help of ECHO, the Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Office in the Commission. And following that, there were also other actions, because TSI can contribute not only to deal with emergencies, but also to set up more long-term structures. And there was also, in parallel to this helping the emergency, also a contribution and a support to the authorities to move from emergency assistance to a more structured and long-term help. And this was also one action which was supported by the TSI. And later on, again, always in the area of reception, additional help and support to extend the network of reception centers. And this was done, and this I want to underline, in complementarity with the funds, the other funds, national and European funds. For example, one of the Home Affairs funds is dealing with asylum, integration and migration. So there was a clear complementarity in the actions between the two. More recently, Ukraine, you mentioned that as well, Johannes. Indeed, in the aftermath of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, TSI helped member states coping with some aspects of it, and indeed helped member states to provide, to have the necessary support, operational and institutional support, to cover the needs of those leaving Ukraine and seeking protection in the EU. And also last year we had an important flagship as well in this area of helping and supporting member states operationally and also institutionally in order to contribute to cover the needs in terms of reception, again in full complementarity with the funds. So I think the flagship that was presented earlier by Natalie will indeed also be an important contribution to this common work, and I'm sure there will be further presentation of the details of it. And it's fair to say that since 2018 and with the different evolution of this tool, we have been using it in complementarity with the rest of the actions at EU level, and certainly they've also contributed to exchange good practices between member states, and also providing evidence and providing a contribution to the actions that are deployed also with other funds and with other support from the EU side.
Thank you very much, and I think you made an important point in that there will, member states will hear more about these proposed flagships through thematic events we will organize to explain them more in detail later today, but also in the near future. And for that reason, we would like to focus now the second round of questions on the flagships proposed this year. And we will start with Mary Veronica. linked to DigiGrow, we are offering two important flagships, one on the single market and competitiveness, and one on the economic security in technologies and resources. So we would like you to tell us how this could help implement the relevant priorities, and also if you can touch on the issue of the capacity of public administrations to make the single market work better, given that one of the flagships concerned relates to the single market and competitiveness.
Yes, indeed. I think a lot has been said already about the competitiveness, and also recently published LETA report. For us, this is an important moment to support the discussions, political discussions, about the competitiveness of the European Union, and the discussions which took place as recently as last week at the European Council about this new competitiveness deal. So here in this context, single market plays a critical role for us Europeans. You can find a lot about the recommendations how to improve the empowerment of the single market in LETA report. It is clear that single market can offer a scale to companies to really build their capacities. It is also very clear that in today's realities, with these changes in the international environment, in global structural transformations, Europe needs to adapt. So these were the motivations that, together with our colleagues in DG Reform, we were thinking of how to support our member states to also have this push, through reforms and concrete projects, TSI projects this year. So there is a so-called ESTER flagship. I like this acronym because it's much shorter than the full word. The full explanation is economic security in technologies and resources, so short, ESTER. So what is the relevance of this proposed flagship? It links directly to the Green Deal Industrial Plan, which I mentioned earlier, but you would also remember that recently we adopted two legislative proposals, Net Zero Industrial Act and Critical Raw Materials Act. And here I would like to link also what William said at the beginning. We want to support member states also when it comes to the implementation of these legislations, which sometimes are not very easy to be put in place. And I know this because I used to work in a national administration for 1/3 of my professional career. So what we would like to do here is really help you to implement these two, for example, implementing these two legislative acts. I can give you, a few concrete ideas, but I'm sure when you talk to your colleagues in capitals, they have much more. Think of, critical raw materials, and there, we would need to, member states would need to develop the monitoring and stockpiling measures, which are included in this Raw Materials Act. So we could think of, a nice project to support your setup of these capacities in your own countries. When it comes to Net Zero Industrial Act, we are talking about something which you can hear very, very frequently these days in the debates, how to also use our public money, which is 14% of our GDP, how to use that money to better support also our own technological capacities. So here we come with this, idea which comes from Brussels, go for more strategic public procurement. And this is somehow also part of our, story in the Net Zero Industrial Act. So here we are asking you to develop the criteria for more sustainability and resilience criteria in public procurement, Here, I think it's an excellent opportunity for those of you who are putting your hats together in the capitals, and you can, how to implement that part of NZIA. Use also the TSI as an opportunity, and I can give you more examples, but my colleagues in the GROW are very, very happy to share, additional thoughts if there is a need on this front. And the second point I want to make is obviously, bread and butter of our DG GROW, which is single market and competitiveness. You mentioned it, Ioannis, that this is getting really in the focus, of our talks, not only here in Brussels, I think across Europe. How to use the single market potential better. It's, of course, implementing new legislation, which I mentioned, but not only. Yesterday, I was at the conference where we were discussing Cleta report with the industry. Guess what was their first plea? Please make a single market with, less regulatory burden. Please simplify. Please get away the barriers. And this is all the agenda which we are proposing in our TSI. And this is why also I think LETA report itself really puts a value to the TSI when it comes to the discussions to the single market. This is a vehicle which we should use to really empower our single market. Not you will say, okay, go away, you're here in Brussels, get first clean, the regulatory burden that is produced here. I think we are doing that. William has confirmed we will have more to do. But I think this should be a collective effort. There is a lot also that would need to be done, on the national level, member states level, regional level. I'm thinking here of what SMEs are talking to us. They are saying to us, please reduce the administrative burden, which is our biggest problem. But it's not necessarily asking do less. They're just asking also to do, legislation in a more kind of friendly way, more digital, less paper, more, smart solutions. So I'm thinking here also to support you when you're looking into how to get away with this gold plating, how to also reduce the reporting obligations, how to strengthen the governance, putting in place one-stop shop, how to also come up with the regulatory sandboxes. Here we are to support your thinking around that, and I am strongly inviting you to use this opportunity and propose projects in the single market and competitiveness flagship.
Thank you, Mary Veronica. And just to say that in session 2 that follows, we will hear more, or the colleagues online and here will hear more about these 2 specific flagships you mentioned and others. One other area where we are trying to tackle simplification for the business environment is revenue administration. And maybe, Benjamin, if you could say a few words about that flagship. Overall, we have about 10 minutes left, so it's about 3 minutes each for the last.
Okay, let me start where Maria Veronica stopped, actually. Reducing the administrative burden. Take an SME, for instance. In average, according to DG GROW studies, the cost of the tax red tape absorbs 2.5% of the annual turnover of an SME. 2.5%, just the red tape. That's a difference sometimes between life and death for an SME. That can be equivalent to the profit margin. So there's clearly a lot that needs to be done. The Commission has tabled a number of legislation recently. We have one which was part of the SME package, which is called HOT, another one which aimed at simplifying VAT, which is called VITA. But clearly, in the tax field, the taxpayer needs, first, better designed rules. Here, there's a lot of variation between member states. Some member states have pretty FT tax codes with plenty of tax credit and tax exemption and relatively high rates, which you don't know whether they are truly high in reality, if you take into account all the credit. And some have pretty simple tax rules. So clearly, the design matters. Second, we need more predictability of the tax rules. And there, clearly, among the elements which are which have been identified by DG Reform in relation with us for the implementation of this flagship. You have elements which can help, like advanced pricing arrangement, where you give some certainty to the company in advance on how to implement the transfer pricing rules and whether it's acceptable or not. Cooperative compliance is also an area where, by working closely with the company, the tax administration get a better understanding of how the company functions and what are its tax challenges, and in return, the company gets more certainty on its tax liability. We need also to ensure more readability of the rules and avoid mushrooming of exception, addition, etc., which make it impossible to understand for anyone. Last but not least, digitalization. Very clearly, that has been one of the flagship also of the TSI that remain a very important topic for all tax administration. We need to build user-friendly digital interface which allow to simplify the administration of taxation. That has already been the case for the personal income tax in most member states, which is now primarily digital. We need to take steps in this direction also for the corporate income tax. There are some projects which are of major ambition that exist today, notably in the Nordic countries, that need to be supported. I would also mention, even though unfortunately that is not in the simplification area, but I mention it because Nathalie mentioned it, there are huge challenges attached to the implementation of the Pillar 2 directive. The directive on the minimum effective taxation of multinational is very complex. I can say it openly because primarily we're importing the complexity of an international agreement, so we can plead non-guilty. But to give you an idea, the transposition of this directive for a country like Estonia, just the transposition represents twice the size of their whole tax code. PIT and CIT included, and that's just one directive. The concepts used in the directive are completely new for tax inspector. For instance, it's not using tax accounting, it's using financial accounting, creating huge training needs. So there are major challenges for which the flagship of DG Reform of the TSI can be immensely useful.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Everyone online and here, you can hear more about this in session 3. And William, on demography, on the flagship on demography, if you can say a few words, please.
Thank you very much, Yanis. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very interesting contrast from Benjamin. We were just hearing about these really sort of concrete, down-to-earth ways in which the TSI flagship can help. Now, on demography, we're talking about an issue which sometimes seems so sort of enormous that we don't know where to start. We know that Europeans are leading longer, healthier lives. This creates huge opportunities, but it also means that there are huge challenges for the labour market, for public finance, for social protection. And so what we have to do is we have to kind of break that down into how can we be concrete and how can we really help. And that was what the demography toolbox of last October was trying to do, was trying to say that we're not powerless, there are things we can do to get our systems ready and to really make it work. So the toolbox set out a lot of ideas on how to do that, and then the TSI flagship is really focused on how we can help to really make that work. And I think that has sort of two really key elements to it. The one is on the what, and the other's on the how. So on the what, we can help to look at a number of very specific areas where you have to take the demographic side into account. For example, on pensions reform, when pensions reform is happening, it's important that you kind of hardwire into that these issues about taking into account flexible retirement, combining pension income and the salary, so you're smoothing the path to the use of an older generation in the labour market. And then at the other end of the labour market, you're also really working at the skills. We saw the very alarming results that came out on the PISA of the wrong direction in which educational attainment is going. That has to be addressed, otherwise we are really kind of storing up issues for the future in our ability to handle the demographic situation as it develops over the years. So there were a number of really important policy areas that the flagship can help us to deal with. But then also on the how, there are also ways in which the flagship can help public administrations to see how they can work on this themselves. For example, in developing or updating national strategies aimed at countering demographic change. At areas like data, it's really important to kind of get a handle on this through using and collecting the right data in the first instance. Some very concrete areas where the flagship can help as well. So it's that combination where I think the demography flagship provides a really, really interesting way in which the TSI can help.
Thanks a lot. It's indeed a comprehensive, complex flagship, which will be explained in session 3, as will be explained the flagship on migration. We are supporting the implementation of the Migration and Asylum Pact. The last few minutes, couple of minutes to you, Silvia, to explain a bit the importance of that flagship.
Thank you, Ioannis. I take the challenge of replying in a couple of minutes. So indeed, this 2025 flagship supporting member states with the implementation of the new pact on asylum and migration. Why it's so important and why it's so important now? It is because we soon have, hopefully, the new pact on migration and asylum. The Parliament just voted on it, and we expect the Council to express itself in the next few days. So we count on having this new pact, which sets a comprehensive framework to manage migration in Europe and to move also from a more ad hoc and short-term to long-term solutions with a good mix of responsibility and solidarity between member states. And from that moment, from the moment the pact will be adopted, we will have 2 years, so from, let's say, summer 24 to summer 26, to implement the pact. And it will be a big task for the Commission, for the member states, for the agencies like Frontex or like the European Asylum Agency. Where this TSI helps is that it can support member states in implementing the pact. In the summer, the Commission will present a common implementation plan to outline all the steps that are needed to implement the pact. By the end of the year, member states will present national plans with the objective of setting out the steps and actions needed. And the TSI can help member states implement those national plans. So in 2025, the TSI can give a clear contribution to that, of course, in complementarity again with all the actions that we will put in place in the Commission and in the agencies. So I invite everybody to follow closely the session in which all this will be explained in details and take up this opportunity, which is very important and significant right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. And just to say that the first session that follows is on public administration. I haven't mentioned, so I want to be fair. And I want to thank you all for coming here today, because your presence and what you have said underlines that we have managed to link the TSI to important EU priorities for the benefit of member states. Thank you. Back to you, Raquel.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our directors for taking time from your busy agenda. I think this panel really shows that together we are stronger. We know we are running late, but we will not skip the coffee break. I promise, that's for sure, but please bear with me. We still have now the first MECA presentation, and I am pleased to introduce my colleague Kjartan Bjornsson. Is going to give more details about 4 flagships. We will try to shorten, and then we break for the coffee break. Kjartan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Raquel, and sorry for being between the morning session and your coffee break. First of all, just say that I have just started this job 1st of January. Very much looking forward to working with all of you. I'm also the deputy to Natalie, and my task here today is to try and talk you through Europe's biggest industry and how we can help this industry live up to its potential. An industry that covers just over half of the GDP of Europe, an industry that employs more than a fifth of all Europeans employed. This industry, of course, is Europe's public sector. Now, the political debate we have also heard yesterday and this morning is about Europe's competitiveness. It's back center stage, and it's very obvious that quality and productivity of this industry has a huge impact on Europe's prosperity and welfare. Enrico Letta has been referenced several times yesterday and today. His report on the future of the single market just reminded us of the key role member states' public administrations play to make the single market work by translating EU law and policy objective into concrete actions and by ensuring the effective use of EU funds. He also expressed concern that member state administrations often lack the technical and administrative capacity to reap the full benefits of EU policies, laws, and investments. Maybe the mechanics that the Greek Minister of Interior referenced yesterday is what we need to focus on. So some of the challenges of the European public sector include meeting higher expectations and more tasks with fewer resources, increased complexity, attracting and retaining talent. This is not new to you. The world around us is changing very quickly, and the public sector needs to adapt and modernize. And that's why we launched the Compact. Natalie referenced it very clearly this morning, as a platform for better collaboration, for focus on key challenges and working together to find joint solutions. In this spirit, we have designed the new flagships in line with the three main pillars of Compact. The flagships focus on public administration skills, on digital transformation, and on green public administration. In addition, we have the PACE, so Public Administration Cooperation Exchange, as we had in previous years. We believe that these flagships will allow us all to work together to build a public administration that is fit to face current and future challenges. In fact, we want to write a different story. We want to write a story where civil service is not seen as part of the problem, but as part of the solution, where the civil service is a problem solver and a facilitator, a civil servant that creates new ideas, inspires and listens equally to all citizens based on trust. Also a feature that came very clearly out yesterday. As civil servants with such a spirit will also manage, in our view, to attract and retain the best talents, because people, young people in particular, they gravitate to jobs with purpose and where one can make a positive contribution. In this sense, our flagships are linked with the overall aim of helping you build the civil service of the future. When I present the flagships, I will not outline the individual measures. I would like instead to explain to you the values and the rationale behind each flagship, and I will highlight what you should pay attention to in particular when identifying and designing your TSI 25 request. So let's start. I've already put the first slide on skills. Now, this flagship is about building the future of the civil service. We want you to think big here. We want you to think across the civil service system. How can we build better capacity? How can we adapt and ensure resilience in the face of crisis? How can we ensure that civil service is up to the task to meet societal expectations, to embrace future challenges, and to deliver better service to rebuild trust in institutions? Now, because we mentioned skills in the title, you might think that the flagship is about training, but this is actually not what we had in mind. We need people, yes, with individual skills, but we want you to think about systemic skills and capabilities across teams, across departments, across ministries. We want you to propose reforms that are about organizational transformation of the civil service. We want to see projects of an open, collaborative, and future-oriented learning organization. Collaboration is a feature across ministries and institutions at central level, but also between national, regional, and local authorities. This was also referenced yesterday very much by our commissioner, and it's very, very important that we also look at partnership within and inside and outside the civil service. You build capacity to deliver, and you try to find innovative solutions to complex problems. Now, an interesting example for inspiration would be the effort by several countries to set up an internal consultancy to pool knowledge and to accelerate capacity building inside administrative structures. We see from the existing project that there are different interpretations of what internal consultancy is. It's very different in every country, and that's also why it makes it interesting and brings learning opportunities. And it can be an innovation lab at the center of government supporting services in support of reforms. Another example could be evidence-informed decision-making and how to better integrate research output and findings from researchers into decision-making promises, something that we work together with the JRC and the OECD currently. Now, the next flagship, the capacity for Europe's digital decade, you will remember that last year's digital flagship emphasized artificial intelligence. This has also been referenced several times also this morning. We noticed last year that the request demonstrated the importance of fundamentals of digital transformation in order for artificial intelligence to work. And we found out that many countries still need to work on these essential building blocks to reap the full benefits of or on digital administration. By fundamentals, we think about 4 pillars: data management, such as registries, analytics; interoperability, so that data is connected; electronic identity and authentication, this is very difficult; or business processes and change management. These are the 4 major fundamentals that are important in order for us to reap the benefits. So we also need to look at that aspect. Now, making interoperability work is really at the heart of successful digital transformations. You could say that if public sector organizations were a human body, interoperability would be the arteries through which the blood flows. So absolutely essential. Now, we are very fortunate that we have a solid basis for this new, for this work in the new Interoperable Europe Act. And we would like to support you to follow the standards in this act in the best possible way. Now, digital transformation is never easy, and it's not enough simply to digitalize analog processes. To make digital transformation successful, it requires also organizational transformation and buy-in from the civil service. But what we know is that we need to move from fragmentation of different entities towards collaboration and integration. In fact, a digital organization is by default more collaborative. I'll give you an example from Romania. A substantial support that we have provided helped setting up a national digital transformation strategy to assess the digital maturity of the public administration and the skills of no less than 13,000 civil servants across 42 public institutions. Now, this also helped Romania in police and judicial cooperation by increasingly interoperating with EU information systems for border and visa controls. Now, we continue support in developing a digital competence framework for civil servants to gain the digital skills for the implementation of this work. And we need to carefully manage change. We know that there will be resistance. You are facing resistance. But we need to manage this transition with empathy and to bring the people along with us, both inside the public administration, but also outside. And I now move to the greening, so Compact 3 pillar, or the third pillar of Compact on greening the public administration. Now, some of you might say, unfortunately it's getting increasingly more vocal, that we cannot afford this, or we have other things which are more important. It's too expensive, and I would say in reply that we cannot afford not to put green public administration at the center, because the costs and the consequences of not reducing the environmental footprint of the state and not adapting to climate change will be much, much worse than the cost of these investments. For instance, the terrible floods in Slovenia last August were estimated to cost around 5 billion, which is 8% of GDP. It is no less than a third of the national budget. These are staggering figures. Now, the efforts we make for both climate mitigation and climate adaptation is an investment in our future welfare. And in addition, you might also think about greening in terms of cost, of course, but you could also look at it from innovation. Green procurement is a possibility, of course, of buying less polluting stuff. That's very obvious. But we can also drive or stimulate new products and services because the state has such immense buying power. So if you integrate this into your processes, you might actually also have greener innovation. So with this flagship and as other flagships, we are very much about organizational innovation. We want you to take green out of the isolated corner and mainstream it for every policy and for every investment that you do. Now, luckily, many of you have already very good awareness of the importance and urgency of this. Give you an example from France. So they committed to decrease the carbon emission of the public administration by 80% until 2050. And we have been supporting the French public administration to put greening front and center and to leverage the role of the coordinating authority, the General Commission for Sustainable Development in the Ministry of Ecological Transition. It performs interministerial functions under the authority of the Prime Minister, and it oversees sustainable development activities of all French ministries. So this is about developing a concrete tool for assessing the carbon footprint linked to the state's operations and to set a decarbonization trajectory to reach the government goal of decreasing the carbon emissions. We are also working at the lower level, at regional and local level in 6 regions. Now, as we are running out of time, I'm going to skip this part and say that you will note that this flagship is relevant for the national level, but it's also relevant for the local and for the regional governments. And once again, we would like to see collaboration across territorial boundaries. As with all TSI requests, ensuring a scale and scope of projects so that we can have a systemic impact. That is really what we would like to see. I talked about the flagships with the example of Slovenia floods, and maybe also to say that there's another way of building your climate resilience. One is on investment management. There is a model that's called Climate PIMA, so Climate Public Investment Management Assessment, which is proposed by the IMF. And what I like about this model is that across all sectors, it takes a whole of government approach to infrastructure governance. Now, last but not least, PACE. We heard a lot about PACE yesterday, and it is one of our biggest successes. I like very much Erasmus for civil servants. We know it's very popular. We got more requests again 2024, and we will continue it in 2025. Now, it's clearly a regular program that we have. I'm not going to explain what it is because you know this already very well, but I think what we need to do here is to improve PACE even further. And that means that I would like you to think about two aspects. The first one is capacity, and the second one is impact. On capacity, we need to be very mindful that hosting an exchange is quite an effort. It takes time and resources of the host organization and its people, because while you're hosting, other work is piling up and you can't do it. Now, also for us in DG Reform, we are very happy to facilitate and organize the exchanges for you, but we learned that there is a big difference in our workload between whether you have already a host identified and agreed that they have time to host you, or whether they don't. So finding a host is hard work. We struggle with this, and that's why we would like you to really think carefully about, when you prepare this, that you have in mind, have already identified, if you can, a host that is willing to receive you. Now, and this clearly will increase your chances of success. I'm not saying that we will not be able to support projects where you don't have a host, but if you have already one, I think it's far more likely that we will be able to give you a positive response. Now, we also would like to, it's not an obligation, so please don't misunderstand me, but we would like that those who go on a PACE mission, in return, you are willing to host as well. I think this is in the spirit of what was said yesterday about learning from each other, and we need to scale this up. It's great that we so far, I think, are hoping to have 500 civil servants to do an exchange under the 23 and 24 programs, but 500 is not massive. It's great, but we need to think together, how can we scale it up? How can we make sure that there's even more interaction? Now, one thing that I think would help a lot would be to think about PACE and PACE exchanges as a project. So frame it around a specific problem for which you would like to find a solution by cooperating with your peers in another country. So it's really about what is your specific problem you want to address. I think that would help a lot. Now, it is also about looking longer term. It's not a one-off thing. It should be a longer term collaboration, the beginning of a beautiful friendship, maybe, as one would say. Now, this is in the spirit of PACE, to foster more cooperation and exchange between countries, and building such a spirit that will have clear and positive impact. Now, Mary Veronica mentioned mining and minerals, and maybe I should conclude by saying that we had a good example in Estonia with an exchange with Germany and Poland. They shared hands-on lessons and recommendations about their mining permit practices and post-mining land reclamation. And Estonia took this back to their environmental board and relevant stakeholders to feed it into their legal framework development for geological survey. So a very clear example of learning from each other. Now, I'm coming to the end, and you want to have your coffee break. We had agreed on a number of questions. I think I have addressed the question of why public administration and government is important for the Commission and the key challenges that member states are faced. Now, let me just say here that ultimately, public administration and governance is important because it underpins everything else. Without efficient and effective public administrations, there can be no delivery on EU policies and EU instruments, and there can be no trust from citizens. So I hope that these 4 flagships will address this challenge, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Kjartan. Thank you also for the very telling examples. And yes, so now it's the moment for the coffee break. Pick your coffee, your tea, your sweet pause, and I ask you to come back at 11:45. And we continue with more thematic presentations. Well, see you soon.
Could be something else. Oh, I feel. Oh, you got them feelings too. Oh, why do we play these games? Why can't you feel my pain? You know I feel. I know you got them feelings too. Oh, and I know it's not just me. Takes 2 to for level 3. Be. And I know you've got your game plan for the next 5 years. You're a single man, but if this feels for you like it does for me, then maybe you should let this be. You know I feel for you. You know you got them feelings too. Oh, why do we play these games? Why can't you feel my pain? I know you got them feelings too. Oh, and I know it's not just me. Takes 2 to for level 3. Let this be.
That convenient fire. Is it living up to your dream? Is that convenient fire? Is it make your life a little bit more easy?
She's squared out, well-rounded, eyes closed and the view is astounding. Wasn't looking, but I think that we found it. Hit it quick, get another round in. Did it twice, can't take another pounding. Love sick, leave the rubber housing. Knee deep, still feel like I'm drowning. What a life that we building around it. These walls got me feeling surrounded. But she showed me love. Oh, you bring me good news. Cold liquor, home cooked food. She topped me off, I'm feeling slicker than looks cool. Give me what I want, not what I need, what a good rule. Not easily pleasing, just naive in a good mood. These high leaves are coming off. Watch them blow by me. Wonder when they're gonna find me. Stubborn, but my knees are going soft. Stop asking why me. Is it convenient for you, baby? So convenient to be lost.
Is that convenient fire? it living up to your dream? Is that convenient for you? Is it making your life a little bit more easy?
She'll be the death for me. Sunday morning's more than a moment, morning so heavenly. Loving life, but not where we're going, grappling with gravity. Honey, hush, you don't need to be screaming, the fuck is happening? Our love is reckless, but I'll care for you carefully. Don't have to jump the show, you can fly, I'll follow you happily. Hold me close, will I become what I'm scared to be? Voila, we're gonna wreck this if we don't fly away. Now what's a holiday without some wet pillows? Dark stains in the sand from where we left the boat. Scribbled out our plans, I should've kept the note. Riddles always dance around the topic of the antidote. Little did we know we pushed each other down to stay afloat.
Didn't surprise me that I like the way. 'Cause I know, you know, we know we'd like to date some more, but we can't. And this monogamy, but we want to. Oh yeah, it's the way it seems. You see, I like that way I got back to you, baby. It's not that we view it so differently. It seems we're just scared to get our hands a bit dirty. But I've got to, baby, set this devil free.
Would you rather burn this page? Reading stories in the flames, different colors in the sky. Never ask anything twice. Or would you rather turn this page? Make a story worth the wait. Different colors in the skies. Never ask anything twice. Would you rather burn this page? Reading stories in the flames, different colors in the sky. Never ask anything twice. Or would you rather turn this page? Make a story worth the wait. Different colors in the skies. Never ask anything twice.
We always assume in our lives that every interaction we have with a human being is going to be a life story. But there can be love stories and there can be life stories. We don't know how it's going to end because we don't know. That's the beauty of the journey. So what I'm saying is just let it happen. It happen.
Safe to say, you bring my heart sunlight. It's strange to think you're in a different side. 'Cause I know I wanna feel you close. When it's cold, when I yearn the most. I'm yearning for a touch, someone to bring me love now.
I know I'm supposed to love myself, but it's easier when I'm caressed by someone else. Self-love is a bitch, I put my feelings in stealth mode. No, I'm not gonna go there. See, we've been it before. Sometimes you wanna open the door, you gotta close one. See what's covered in gold can never grow on. There go my ego, go let him die just so my soul can grow on. Would you rather burn this page? Reading stories in the flames, different colors in the sky. Different colors in the sky. Or would you rather turn this page? Make his story worth the wait. Different colors in the sky. Never ask anything twice. Would you rather burn this page? Reading stories in the flames, different colors in the sky. Never ask anything twice.
find another way. Dancing out of sight, moving undercover, take you to the places where the lovers play. I can take the dark if there's a light. Nothing gonna break me, you illuminate me. Shine on me the love you send, and never, never gonna be apart again. So speak in the night, feeling taken over, rising through your body, feeling running through your soul. Speak, it's alright, feeling taken over, feeling getting close enough to lose control. Soul speaks here tonight, accelerate the pleasure. Now we got the measure of our love today. There's no need to fight, heart and soul together, take you to the places where the lovers play. I can be the spark that brings the light. Nothing gonna break me, you illuminate me. Shine on you the love I send, and never, never gonna be apart again. So speak in the night, feeling taken over, rising through your body, feeling running through your soul. Speak, it's alright, feel it taking over, feeling getting close enough to lose control. So speak in the night, feel it taking over, rising through your body, feel it running through your soul. Speak, it's alright, feel it taking over, feel it getting close enough to lose control. My soul is speaking to your baby, you don't need to doubt it. You and me together, you know we can live without it. There won't be nothing in this space here until we create it. Feel it in my bones, are you and me, we're gonna make it. My soul is speaking to your baby, you don't need to doubt it. You and me together, you know we can live without it. There won't be nothing in this space here until we create it. Feel it in my bones, are you and me, we're gonna make it.
All day I'm thinking of you, babe, and saw you. All week my mind is on you, babe, but what you do, you fill my sky so wonderful. You feed my mind and my heart too. You know that's why I stick with you for all my life. make sure I don't walk alone. I'm gonna give you all you want, and it's all for you. You brought the moonlight, we got the moon right. Whisper to my side, baby, for all my life. We can do it all night. Baby, give me all you got. Stick here to my side, baby, for all my night. I lay back in us. It's the sign of trust when it all comes back again. You got me down so comfortable. You got me think the guy's above. Without you in my arms, I don't know that I'd be alright. You show me love I never known. You make sure I don't walk alone. I'm gonna give you all you want. It's all for you. You fill my sky so wonderful. You feed my mind and my heart too. You know that's why I stick with you for all my life. You brought the moonlight, we got the moon right. Whisper to my side, baby, for all my life. We can do it all night. Baby, give me all you got. Stick here to my side, baby, for all my life. Come inside my bubble, come inside and stay. Come and see every part of me. Heal me from my sorrows, heal me from my pain. Come inside my bubble, come inside and stay. Come and see every part of me. Heal me from my sorrows, heal me from my pain. Show me what you see.
Gaan we dat zo meteen ook luisteren? Niet dicht.
4 years on end, I tried and I wondered. All I wanted when I was younger was to understand my role model. What's in your head? Ain't it lonely in there? Don't you know that I can? Can't you see how I'm trying? I'm on your side. Then out of the blue, something new. You opened up, your flowers bloomed, and you said, come inside my bubble, come inside and stay. Come and see every part of me. Heal me from my sorrows, heal me from my pain. Come inside my bubble, come inside and stay. Come and see every part of me. Heal me from my sorrows, heal me from my pain. Show me what you see. You know me, it's not every day I talk about it. Usually, I like to keep inside my feelings. I don't like to deal with it, but I took off the lead just for a little bit. Come inside my bubble, come inside and stay. Come and see every part of me. Heal me from my sorrows, heal me from my pain. Come inside my bubble, come inside and stay. Heal me from my pain. Come inside my bubble.
Mijn handje doen ik deze dan. En dat kan ik met jou ook. Dan kan je met dit dan. 1, 5, 10.
welcome back. Thank you for joining again. I hope the coffee break was very energetic. And we continue with the thematic presentation. I have with me Casper and Laura, and we are going now to present 6 flagships on competitiveness and sustainability. I would like to invite Casper to take the microphone, please. And we will start with single market and competitiveness, which, by the way, has been already ample discussed this morning. And I have a question for you, Casper. The central topic of last week's European Council was precisely about the single market and the European competitiveness. And is it really true that the TSI can help?
Thank you, Raquel. Yes, as we heard from Mary Veronica, the European heads of states last week called for a new European competitiveness deal to close the growth and productivity gaps between the Union and our competitors and the international partners. Now, indeed, it's European businesses that are the engine of jobs and of prosperity, and we need European competitive economies in order to advance Europe's unique social and economic model. Now, as we heard also from Judith and Nathalie, the European Council welcomed Enrique Letta's presentation of his much more than a market report, and there are 3 important points in this report for this flagship. Namely, this report makes it very clear that there are significant bureaucratic burdens faced by companies due to overlapping regulations and complexities. Now, secondly, the report, as also Kjartan explained, highlights that this complexity and volume regulation itself make it very difficult for public administrations. And thirdly, then it really points to the technical support instrument to help member states to build capacity for streamlined regulation that then ultimately strengthen the single market, which has been so central to our prosperity for the last 3 decades. And it's in this spirit that we are launching today this flagship on the single market, on competitiveness. And let me point to 2 areas that we'd like to support, in particular, jointly with member states. First, the primary concern of businesses, in particular SMEs, around the administrative and regulatory burden that they are facing. Indeed, half of the SMEs report that these regulatory obstacles and administrative burden really impede their growth opportunities. And Nathalie explained that the European Commission aims to reduce reporting obligations by 25% at the European level. So we would like to team up with you member states in order to address these challenges also at the national level, in order to streamline processes and make it easier for companies to thrive. There are a number of tools that are available to reduce administrative burden and regulatory burdens, such as digital tools, e-government portals, such as one-stop shops in order to offer single access points to companies ranging from registration, from licensing, from compliance. And indeed, with the TSI, we've worked with Romania on a single industrial license that included also a one-stop shop. Another tool would be, from the better regulation agenda, making the SME test part of regulatory scrutiny. That is, when a member state proposes new legislation, to systematically assess the costs and benefits that this legislation implies for SMEs. And indeed, again, with the TSI, we had a successful collaboration with Croatia on setting up a digital platform for the SME test. And the last example that I wanted to make was the removing unjustified gold plating on EU legislation. Now, all these tools can again help to make it easier for public administration to interact with businesses and then allow businesses to focus more on innovation and growth. So clearly not all these tools are relevant for all the member states, but we hope that there's something in it for everyone. Now, the second area that we like to support with this flagship is it's important to improve competitiveness, not just at the European and national level, but also at the regional and local level, in order to reinforce cohesion and convergence. And we've heard the Commissioner talking yesterday about the 9th Cohesion Report. So really looking forward to working with you on looking at what are the barriers to entrepreneurship and innovation at the regional level and how to attract attract investment and talent, building on the strength in the regions. Again, we have some experience in this area and will be launching, for example, this year an exciting project with Germany and Spain using innovative technologies to deliver public services to entrepreneurs at the regional level. So to conclude on this flagship, it's about reducing administrative and regulatory burden at the national and local level, and through this we hope to improve the single market and competitiveness in the EU. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was very clear. And now we move on to another flagship, which you already heard about this abbreviation, Esther, that the director from DG Grow really appreciated. Can you tell us how a flagship can really help economic security in the member states?
Thank you, Raquel. Yes, so we live in a geopolitical world, and economic security is a key issue in this world. For example, there's intense global competition and certainly not always a level playing field for critical resources and technologies, and this competition will only intensify with the digital and green transitions. So that's why last June the Commission put out the European Economic Security Strategy that sets out on how to maximize the benefits of openness while at the same time minimizing the risk. It has 3 pillars. First of all, promoting the competitiveness in the EU. Secondly, promoting economic security. And thirdly, building reliable partnerships globally. Now, this flagship is really about the first 2 pillars in particular of this strategy, and I wanted to highlight 3 support areas under this flagship on economic security in technologies and resources. Now, let's take the first pillar on competitiveness. Now, you might be asking, why competitiveness again? In the first flagship, it was about administrative and regulative burden reduction. This flagship is, as Mary Veronica explained so well, about supporting, again, the Green Deal industrial plan. And in particular, it offers support to member states on the implementation of the Net Zero Industry Act, which is the framework in Europe to strengthen the net zero technology manufacturing ecosystem. And it's also about offering support to member states on implementing the Critical Raw Material Act, which is the framework for secure and sustainable supply of critical raw materials. So through this component, we really look forward to working with member states, for example, on identifying the potential for localizing in a member state the production, the processing, the recycling of critical raw materials that are currently being imported from third countries outside of Europe, or alternatively, to work with the member states on how to implement these provisions of these 2 acts in order to put in place these effective, simplified permitting procedures for investment projects involving critical raw materials and manufacturing of net zero technologies. And as Mary Veronica pointed to, we have now gaining experience in this field through these projects that she pointed to in Bulgaria and Sweden, as well as the multi-country project involving 5 member states on mining. Now, coming to the second pillar of the European Economic Security Strategy, this is about managing risks to the resilience of supply chains. And again, there are a number of tools to do this. For example, helping member states to identify what are the potential bottlenecks in these supply chains, including, for example, by conducting tests. And then how can one address these potential strategic shortages, for example, through stockpiling strategies, through early warning systems, or through rapid response mechanisms. And again, I'm happy to say that we are working already with Spain on exactly this agenda that we will bring to bear in the new projects as well. And again, on the second pillar, on economic security, the other dimension is managing the risk to technological security, and that can be, for example, through tools to identify the risks to security when the EU companies engage in investment and trade elsewhere. And I'm happy to say that we are launching already this year a project in Belgium, Czechia, Finland, and Romania on the issue of foreign direct investment screening. So to sum up, this flagship, the ESTER flagship, the only one with an acronym, by the way, we hope to promote the work on the Green Deal Industrial Plan, and we hope to help member states to manage the risks, to reduce supply chain risks, as well as risks on technology security. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I'm sure we will help greatly. Now we move on, and we all know and we all concur that energy transition, energy security is very high on the European agenda. And that's precisely on that same topic that we can also propose a flagship to the member states. Kaspar, please unveil a bit more.
Thank you, Raquel. I think it's important to start with the point that the clean energy transition is really a top priority. We want to decarbonize our energy systems in order to meet this goal of climate neutrality by mid-century, as well as to reduce net greenhouse gas emissions by the end of this decade by 55%. And it's also important to say that Europe has made enormous progress recently following Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine and the subsequent energy crisis. The EU has actually accelerated the clean energy transition, and in particular with the Fit for 55 package and the REPowerEU plan, the EU has stepped up its ambition and agreed to more ambitious goals, targets for 2030 on renewable energy. Now, the EU has not just set higher targets, but it has also put in place a framework to achieve those targets, in particular through simplified and faster permitting rules of renewables across the EU. And actually, this has worked. We've seen over the last couple of years record installation of new renewable energy across the EU, and that has really been an important factor to avoid energy supply disruptions as well as to ease the pressure on energy markets. Now, at the same time, it has also become clear that the role of energy infrastructure is critical here to advance this clean energy transition, to integrate these vast amount of renewable electricity and to electrify new sectors such as transport and buildings that so far have relied on fossil fuels. The EU will need to greatly expand its electricity grids, which are really a key backbone of the entire energy system. And this has to happen in a short time and at the least cost possible. Otherwise, the access to electricity grids will be a major bottleneck to develop more solar and wind energy. And that's why, indeed, last week's European Council conclusions called for a substantial deployment of an investment in grids, storage, and interconnections. So through this flagship, we would like to work jointly with member states to build on our very successful partnerships in the area of energy, for example, working with 17 member states on the REPowerEU agenda, or with 7 member states on speeding up permitting for renewable energies. And specifically, this flagship on energy system would support member states in 7 areas. First of all, improving network planning and design of the energy grid, also to make it well aligned with the national energy and climate plans. Secondly, streamlining electricity grid permitting processes at all levels. This should help making sure that projects can be completed faster, and therefore that scaling up financing for these projects becomes also easier. Thirdly, help identify access to funding, including EU funds such as the Modernization Fund to modernize grids. Fourthly, designing electricity markets that can readily integrate renewable energies and to develop energy storage and demand response. Fifthly, to use the digitalization of energy systems, including, for example, through smart grids, as the green and digital transition can really go hand in hand. And last but not least, training, capacity building initiatives for public authorities to equip them with the necessary skills to deliver on this important energy transformation. So with all of this, we hope to continue our work with member states on reforms to deliver this clean, affordable, and reliable energy, and therefore also shore up competitiveness and economic security in the EU. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kaspar and his team will be in charge in the next TSI cycle for 4 flagships. So now we are going to zoom on this last one, which is very much about sustainability of natural resources. Can you also explain what that will mean?
Thank you, Raquel. Now, Europe, amazingly, is a continent of unique biological diversity. It has some 6,500 species that can only be found in Europe. But in addition to the climate crisis, Europe is also faced with a crisis of biodiversity loss. All over Europe, natural ecosystem and biodiversity are degrading. So in order to reverse this trend and to maintain these ecosystems is really a key task because these ecosystems are so vital for agriculture, for food security, for jobs, for livelihoods. Delaying such action would only make it more challenging and more costly to restore this natural capital. These challenges are faced across all EU member states, and we really propose this flagship supporting the resilience of natural resources in order to collaborate with member states on this agenda, and in particular on 5 areas. Now, first of all, the area of sustainable land management. Soils and landscapes are important, not just for biodiversity, but also in order to mitigate climate risks such as floods or coastal erosion. TSI can help, for example, to develop strategy in this area. Secondly, more sustainable and resilient forests, and I'm not just saying that because we are in La Maison du Bois, but also because Europe is the continent of forests, and we can work with member states on implementing the EU forest strategy, for example, by putting in place forest monitoring systems, as well as helping on wildfire prevention, and happy to say that we are working with Czechia, Slovenia, and Germany on this topic. A third area is on water management. And again, we can build on rich experience with member states in this area. For example, we've worked with Estonia to look at this issue of financial sustainability of water supply companies. Initially, we've helped them to amend the legislation as well as to develop an action plan, and in a follow-up project that's ongoing now, we are supporting the implementation of this action plan. A fourth area is about finance, public and private finance for biodiversity. The TSI can help member states to identify funding priorities as well as identify sources of financing to tackle the biodiversity crisis. And finally, TSI can also support member states in the area of biodiversity protection in line with the EU biodiversity strategy. To give you one concrete example, we are currently collaborating with the Netherlands, Denmark, and Germany on a project to digitalize the monitoring of the East Atlantic flyway in the Waddenzee. The Waddenzee is a natural heritage site and a vital resource for millions of birds when they're migrating between North America and Southern Africa. And digitalization can really help to play a key role in the monitoring and preserving of this unique asset. Now, just to sum up, not just in this flagship, but across all flagships, we really would like to encourage joint collaborations with member states, sharing of lessons, experiences, because, as we know, together we are stronger. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaspar. Please join, come back and join and take your seat. And we move on. I invite Laura to take the microphone. And what's the best way to continue with Laura? Indeed, you spoke about sustainability, and we continue on sustainability, because also when it comes to the financial markets, sustainability is a very important issue. That's what Laura will explain, because we also we have a solution. We have a flagship precisely to tackle the implementation of sustainability reporting framework for companies, including SMEs. And Laura will explain more what that means.
Thank you, Raquel. Indeed, I will continue where Kaspar left it in relation to priorities to the green transition and action needed by the member states, and link it to sustainable finance, which is a key part of the Green Deal, because sustainable finance is really necessary to bridge the transition and reorient investment to sustainable activities. Doing this, moving to sustainable activities, requires transparency, requires information about what corporates are doing, our European firms, and what is the impact of their activities on environmental, but not only, also social and governance factors, the so-called ESG impact. Now, this requires having comparable and common indicators to make sure that transparency is really transparency and that there is no no greenwashing, and that all firms have equal opportunities. And as part of this is indeed, this is what sustainability reporting is actually aimed at doing through two main pieces of regulation, one being the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and the other one, the EU Taxonomy Regulation. The first one, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, is actually imposing mandatory reporting based on sustainability reporting standards that are defined at European level that the firms can use when making the reporting obligations on ESG factors. And the EU taxonomy regulation is in fact a science-based classification system to identify the sustainable economic activities which is applied in the corporate sustainability reporting directive. So the idea of this flagship is to assist the national authorities in helping the corporate sectors, which is very much composed in Europe by small firms, by SMEs, in helping them to implement this new sustainability reporting. Why is this needed? Why do we need to help corporates? Well, first of all, because sustainability reporting is a relatively recent concept, and it's also extremely complex. And it's a new terrain for many firms because although corporates are already reporting on many different areas like financial matters or corporate sustainability in general, here we go to a much deeper level of complexity, and also the scope of firms that are involved in this obligation is much broader. Another reason, the second reason why it's important to help firms in the member states in doing this is that sustainability reporting is also a fantastic opportunity for them. It is essential for the financial sector, which is a partner to corporates, to be able to make their own reporting and also to define and price the appropriate products and services that are necessary for firms to operate. Just to give one example, of course, they need insurance coverage for their activities, and therefore these need to take into account the exact situation in which they are operating. Importantly, SMEs that are not listed are not in the scope of this mandatory reporting on sustainability. However, they are facing increasing pressure from both their banks and their suppliers or customers to be able also to report. So although they are not obliged to follow the same sustainability reporting, they will be simplified reporting that will be proposed for SMEs to really help them to be to have all the same opportunities and to facilitate this reporting. Now, what we want to do is really to focus on usability. It was mentioned already this morning by the director of DG Grow and by my colleagues, including Caspar, that the Commission is committed to reduce administrative burden for SMEs and corporates as a whole. And this flagship should be seen as part of this effort. But also, we also want to make sure that awareness is raised across firms of the benefits and the opportunities for them to do so. We want them to be able to be more competitive and to grow, but doing this within in alignment with the green transition, which is posing new challenges to them. And also, we believe that this sustainability reporting will also help more and more to have ESG criteria being taken into consideration by the decision makers of those firms when taking their decision, and overall make the whole transition faster. So the type of measures that are included in this flagship will be predefined, and the member states will have the possibility to choose among them, but they will include diagnostic measures, so like making, for instance, a mapping of what are the available and reliable data that the corporates can use for their reporting. There will be implementation measures. So, for instance, it could be creating a single access point for accessing the relevant data in the member states, and also capacity building and awareness raising, which could be creating free modules, free training modules for entrepreneurs, or also communication campaigns, and much more that member states can propose and choose from.
Thank you so much, Laura. And you will have another flagship, which actually it's a continuation. So that means it was a success, correct? You will explain us more why we are continuing again the Financial Academy.
Thank you, Raquel. Indeed, I think the success of it was highlighted very well yesterday in the podcast that we had with our director Berger and Steven Mayor from the Central Bank of the Netherlands. And indeed, as they were outlining, over the last decade, there has been a fantastic evolution in the financial world due to the introduction and the evolution of innovative technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain. And this has really created a new set of products and services, which we all know being called digital finance. But this development is not only impacting the financial world, it's not only in the trading rooms and in the banks, it's really affecting all of us. Just to give you a couple of examples, there are about 300 million people in the world owning or trading Bitcoins. Or also, another example, my 14-year-old son, through his phone, simply through his phone, would be able to start trading in gold or buying Apple shares. So this is really a revolution to which we all need to be prepared. And as was mentioned yesterday, it's very important that people have trust in the financial system, and this is the responsibility of the supervisors. Sorry. So it was described very well how the challenges for the financial sector related to sustainable finance are impacting the whole financial sector in a rather similar way, so both including bank, capital markets, and insurance. And this is exactly what then the EU Supervisory Digital Finance Academy is doing. It is an academy that we have launched in 2022, which puts together financial supervisors from the three sectors to really develop their skills, but also develop so understanding about market evolution, understanding the impact that they bring on the financial sector, but also to understand how they can benefit from it, how they can use it to do supervision in a more efficient way. And this creates, it's not only a comprehensive training program, but it's really a common playground for all of them to exchange and to build applications together and to create a common supervisory culture, because indeed digital finance development are affecting all of the member states equally. So it's really about addressing a common challenge, which is also in line with European priorities, and doing this while reaching economies of scale, not only creating a common understanding, but also not making each one its own investment, which are huge. So really working together. As a result, as also mentioned yesterday, we started in 2022 with 26 competent authorities from 20 member states. And now at the end of the second year, we have 37 authorities from 26 member states. So why are we proposing it again? Well, there are two answers. One is because it proved to be very successful. The participants asked us to continue. because they found it useful, and linked to that also because the evolution of digital finance is not over. We have learned a lot together through these years. Regulation has been developed, is being implemented, but still the evolution of the sector is huge, and there is more attention to be put on this. By all the member states, and doing this together, it's definitely useful and time and cost savings. Just to mention, the developments on generative artificial intelligence, the introduction of the AI Act, decentralized finance. So there is a lot more to come, which we need to better understand to be able to master it. Now, just to conclude, I think most of the beneficiary authorities from the financial sector that are listening to us already know what I'm talking about, because 26 member states are participating. What I want to stress is that if they want to continue, we will continue with the current program until the end of the 24 academic year. But if they want to continue, if they want more, they have to apply again for the second cycle, which will cover the period that goes from 2025 until 2027, which is the end of the current TSI instrument. So there is space for all of those that were in the program already, and even more, and so they are all welcome to apply for the second round.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting again. You did mention, Laura, and please take your seat, join us again. You did mention economies of scale, and if I may say, that's really a perfect example how the single market really plays an important role for everything we do, and how the TSI as a tool fits perfectly well with the single market dimension. So that's a very good way to end this thematic presentation. Thank you so much, colleagues. Please take your seats, and we are going to continue with the last thematic presentation. And now I call on stage my colleagues for the last thematic presentation. Please join me, Raluca, Christoph, and Francesca. Please take your seats. Thank you. It has been a long morning, but very interesting. We have presented so far 10 flagships, sorry, I correct, 10 flagships, so we have 5 more to present. And now I start with Raluca. You have very important flagships, you already have very important ones, and you continue to have it the next TSI cycle. So, the first one is about demographic change, and we already heard this morning how important it is and the recent reports from the Commission about the subject. And I would like you, Raluca, to elaborate and explain to our audience here and online, how can the TSI support and offer member states concrete solutions in this regard?
Good morning. Thank you, Raquel, for the question. Before I explain how the TSI can help, I just want to give you some numbers. So in September, when school started, there was a European barometer focused on the European Year of Skills. Why? Because we need skills in order to drive the digital and green transition. And what respondents said in the Eurobarometer, nearly two-thirds, 63% of SMEs said that they face acute shortages in terms of skills and labor. About half of those who responded this way said that the lack of skills is really impeding driving innovation, driving digitalization. And about 23% of those said that it's impossible to find innovative solutions for the green economy in the absence of skills. Now, to put things into perspective, the other trends that we observe in Europe is that we have a declining workforce. So from 2 years ago, 265 millions of people working age population, we will be soon in 2030 at a working population of 257 million. And third element to keep in mind is that we have 20% of people inactive, people who are within the range of 18 to 64-year-olds. This is quite concerning. And last element, we have recently had the PISA results that showed us concerning numbers in terms of basic skills in mathematics, for example. Nearly 30% of teenagers do not have basic skills in mathematics, and 25% lacking skills in reading and STEM. Now, I said all this because you will see very quickly demography in the EU is not only about supporting the elderly, it's not only about social services, improving access and quality of healthcare. It is about dealing with education systems and labor market reforms. Therefore, it is urgent that we focus on reforming the education system so that teenagers' basic skills increase again. It is important to focus on lifelong training, upskilling, reskilling of the workforce, and it is important to attract to the labor market the inactive people. I refer here, for example, to women, because in the absence of adequate early childhood education and care, of course, mothers are the parent most often at home with the kids. So we need education, labor market focus, and then two other elements for the regions that face strong trends in terms of depopulation, brain drain. We need targeted measures. Then we also have to look on the fiscal side, work with the ministries of finance, and here we can help them integrate demographic trends into public budgeting. And last element, of course, we need to support better coordination between social services and health services for the elderly. And this is why we created the framework of the demography flagship, which we're presenting today. We have created specific work packages. If we're talking about education, to work together with the ministries of education, work packages focused on labor market issues, upskilling, reskilling, and then modules on public finance, and then also supporting regions and the elderly. That's why I hope by the time school starts this year, we will have interest from the member states to work with us in these areas.
I'm sure you will have, and you did explain really well. Actually, it's interesting what you said, because there's a lot of evidence based on the basis of the decision of the flagships. Not only in this case, but you really explain it, but in all the flagships. So it's the rationale for it and the need for them. And now you have a second flagship that will keep you busy in the next TSI cycle. And it's, again, something that has already been ample discussed. It's about health. Health, it's also an area where the TSI has already a proven capacity to deliver on the ground. And in this flagship, Raluca, it's also because there's significant investments involved. And there we also help on the policy, but also on this more strategic side. Could you explain how the Health Hub flagship will support member states in making sure the strategic investments will be met?
Sure. So, 3 years ago, we started cooperating with 3 member states, Austria, Belgium, and Slovenia. And the purpose of the cooperation within a multi-country project was to enable the ministries of health of those 3 member states find better solution, navigate better through the available EU funds for health investments in order for them to be able to make best value for money in terms of investments into the resilience of health system, into harnessing innovation, digitalization, to increase both accessibility to health services, but also, very important, of course, the quality of health services. They have told us that, of course, we have many EU funds available, a lot of money, but what needs is the know-how on how to potentially even combine these EU funds bring them as a complement to national investments so that when they invest into health systems, innovation, resilience, they do that in a better manner. So our project with the 3 member states will be coming to an end this year, but because we have seen working on pilot projects, looking at testing investment solutions, for example, in the greening of the hospitals, in primary care and integrated care, we thought of opening the possibility to the other member states to also test solutions in terms of investments into health, and that could be on a very broad range of topics. It can be about reorganizing the hospital system, it can be reorganizing primary care, and also supporting, of course, member states' efforts to work towards better digitalized, better integrated health systems in line with the European health data space, which is the Commission ambition to achieve a system where once a person moves from one member state to another, the whole medical file can be accessible so that there is no more need to carry papers, to phone doctors in your home member state, and then make your data, your file accessible to, if needed, to the member state where you're visiting or you're working in. So what we propose again is working on 2 pillars. One is looking really at increasing the strategic investment to assist ministries of health to absorb EU funds, to combine them with national funds, potentially blend the EU funds. And then a second is also better enabling ministries of health to have a dialogue, to present bankable solutions vis-à-vis the ministries of health, so that they are better at making the case for investments. And then we can also look at procedures, so looking at health technology assessment, accounting, costing in the health sector. So working in partnerships between ministries of finance, ministries of health, to make, as I said, a best value for money when it comes to investments into resilience of health systems.
Thank you. It was very interesting, very telling, also the examples, and we wish you success for the next cycle. Yes, you spoke a lot about social policies, health systems. We all know these, of course, obviously require sustainable public finances. And indeed, now I turn to Christoph. Indeed, in this area, the TSI can also help. So we can demonstrate that the TSI also helps the core areas of the economic governance. And I would like to put you a question, Christoph, and it's about enhancing the quality of public finances. We have just heard about the case of Raluca. So why is there a need for innovation? And what does the specific flagship, which is about quality of public finances, innovating in public financial management practices? How can we help more the member states?
Thank you very much, Raquel. You know, the new economic governance framework basically changes quite heavily, but in a very good way also, the requirements for member states in budgetary planning. It does so, I believe, really in a very good way, putting a more midterm orientation for the budgets, so really longer-term thinking, but also putting more effort and more focus on structural reforms and investments and how to integrate them in our fiscal thinking. I think these are good developments, and the flagship's purpose is exactly to help member states to put these new requirements as need to be adapted on the ground. Now, there are many entry points here. In technical terms, we need to improve medium-term budgetary frameworks. We need to integrate spending reviews into budgetary cycles. There are many, many areas. But let me just focus on 3 examples where innovation plays a key role. And these examples are part of the flagship, and the aim of them is to improve the budgetary performance of fiscal authorities, to prepare them better for the fiscal risks of the future to come, and also to use the best technology for this purpose. So on budgetary performance, let me take an example of green budgeting, which basically helps member states to invest more in environmental priorities. I was just 2 weeks ago with representatives from 9 other European Union member states at the French Ministry of Finance, and they've demonstrated really a very good piece of work, which shows how much of the French central government budget helps or harms the environment, and how this is changing over time. This may seem very basic information, but it's actually very good information for good policy making, and it's not easy to get. We've been working a lot in DG Reform, training over 1,000 civil servants from 23 EU member states on using green budgeting tools. And that's just one example, but the flagship will help member states to put such budgeting tools, other budgeting tools also related to gender budgeting, sustainable development goal budgeting, into their mainstream thinking. Let me give another example on fiscal risks. There was already a very, very precise talk how climate change will cost us money. And according to some estimates, until the end of this century, 12% of the world GDP may be affected by climate-related damage. I believe it's quite self-evident that fiscal authorities should understand that and should better plan for those fiscal risks. Now, we are already working with a large group of independent fiscal institutions, so-called fiscal watchdogs, on this issue, helping them to understand methodologically, technically, which scenarios do I need to build? Which macro fiscal parameters do I need to think of in order to really understand what this climate change means in fiscal terms? The flagship is an entry point for the whole of public administration to dive deeper into this topic, and that needs to be done quickly because it's a complex issue and we need to know the figures now. And voila, the offer to the ministries of finance is on the table with this flagship.
Well, thank you, and it's very concrete, very tangible, I would say. And again,
I have one more point that I would like to bring, if you allow, Raquel, and that's related to the use of technology and AI. And just to bring an example out of the EU, for once, I had recently the pleasure to witness from a colleague from South Korea, and he has given me the permission to talk about this example, about the fiscal reporting in South Korea. If you take the fiscal annual reports of South Korea, that adds up to 20 books, totaling at least 5,000 pages. I mean, this is hard to digest, even for hardcore fans of fiscal literature, I believe. And AI can collect and process such information better. So our flagship will be an entry point for ministries of finance to use AI to become better at reporting the data. And that's very important for many, many different reasons. And I think if we manage to do that better, we will get more people who are interested in reading fiscal literature, actually. So in conclusion, I would say, these are the 3 concrete examples. It's a broad flagship to offer, and voila, I'm really, really curious how many of you will respond to this flagship.
well, thank you so much. I'm sure there will be a lot of interest. Also, it's interesting, all this, the profile that you described, and to be put in a very other layer of things, so it's really telling. Also what you mentioned regarding, again, the angle to public administration and the capacity in the member states. Again, we demonstrate with what we do in digital reform, we are quite well organized to respond ample to this. But Christoph, there's another flagship on your way, and that is on the revenue administration. And if not all of us, I think we certainly agree that simplification is a necessity. And it's also there that the TSI can help. How can we understand this term in terms of the simplification of revenue administration in relation to the revenue administration and in relation to this concrete flagship? What can we offer to the member states?
Yeah, thank you, Raquel. Tax revenue in the EU accounts for 40% of EU's GDP. I think with this figure it should become evident to everyone that tax administration is key for businesses. And simplification here means making the life easier for businesses. That means reducing the red tape, increasing tax certainty, and also making tax rules simpler. And this is the simple ambition of the flagship. Now, the first building block of the flagship is supposed to cut red tape for small and medium-sized enterprises. Benjamin Angel from DigiTaxud already mentioned that tax compliance costs for SMEs can be very, very high. But we have also seen in DG Reform that these can be reduced. We worked with the Hungarian tax administration on reducing these costs. And the result of our work, by basically implementing a single channel for tax data collection, was that the time for companies to submit all the needed data was reduced by 40%. I think that time saving is basically translating into monetary savings that now Hungarian companies can use to actually create jobs. So the flagship will offer an entry point for such kind of actions, digitizing processes, simplifying tax and customs forms, and implementing really 21st century fit customer service oriented tax administrations. That's the first building block. The second building block aims to increase tax certainty for large businesses, but also for the tax administration itself. I think it's evident that if a company knows how much tax is due in a year, this will dramatically increase their confidence to invest and to create new jobs. So to give an example, in Poland, for example, we are working with the Ministry of Finance, helping them rolling out a large cooperative compliance program for businesses. Up to 4,000 large businesses in Poland may be able to join this initiative. And we already see that this move of the Polish Ministry of Finance is building trust between the administration and large businesses, and ultimately this will result in bigger investments and more jobs. So the flagship, again, it's an entry point for such kind of action, increasing the tax certainty for large taxpayers and public administration, also in relation what was mentioned by Director Benjamin Angel to the implementation of the Pillar 2 Minimum Tax Directive, which is a very complex animal. I could very well imagine that that we could think in future of establishing an academy for the implementation of Pillar 2 and really making all the tax administrations work together on that, being trained together on that, because there is no time to lose in this field. And just briefly, on the third element of this flagship, which is simplifying tax frameworks. This flagship will look on tax rules, it will look on tax laws, and basically explore with member states how to make them simpler. We just started work with the Maltese Tax and Customs Authority to look how to develop policy to implement for businesses real-time reporting of their tax data. And it's clear simplifying tax policy in a way that this is possible will decrease the costs for businesses and ultimately will make sure that businesses can pay their taxes at the right time and with the right amount. It will be a win-win for everyone. The flagship will also establish policies for more balanced and fair tax policies. Just think of green taxation, basing it on the polluter pays principle, economically very well justified, very well needed, yet you need to flank it with social policies. So we will also propose that and help member states in looking at this nexus of social and tax policies to get the right balance here. In all three components of the flagship, basically simplifying the administration, increasing the tax certainty, and improving tax policy frameworks, we will make sure, as best as we can, that everyone works together as partners, because we have heard it, together we are stronger. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you, indeed, and all the examples that you gave demonstrates that this is really about real economy, and the TSI is a very concrete instrument that is so comprehensive and can provide all this kind of support. Dear audience, dear colleagues, we are about to conclude, but before we conclude this thematic presentation, we will now zoom into the last flagship. And we have with us Francesca, and Francesca will explain how are we going to support member states in implementing something that will come, which is the Pact on Migration and Asylum, a very important political priority for this Commission. The pact, as we heard this morning from DG Home, is now in the final decision to be adopted. And this is actually a very good example of the forward-looking and the strategic view that we put in our activities, and definitely we put in the TSI planning. We are already now announcing to the member states there will be a specific flagship to help them in the next 2 years on the transposition period, so they are ready when the moment comes. Francesca, you will tell us more.
Thank you, Raquel, for the introduction. And yes, this was a flagship that we needed to propose to member states, as this is an important priority, political priority for the Commission. It was complex to negotiate. It covers many different topics and components in the area of migration management, with an aim to have a comprehensive approach. It was complex to negotiate. It will be probably complex to implement by the member states. As you may know, it includes some components, legislative framework to be transposed. The pact also proposed new tools. I'm taking examples, tools to implement migration management, such as the talent pool, which is a means to match skills needed in the European labor market with skills available abroad through third country nationals, possible migrants who have skills to fill these gaps. Another tool that will be totally new is the putting into place of a financial solidarity mechanism under the asylum and migration regulation. It will be new, complex to put into place, and the TSI will be there to help. Now, both in the transposition of the directive, making EU law compatible with existing EU law, with existing national law, because not everything will be new. And then putting, yes, sorry, I heard you. I hope that you heard what I was saying before. Yes, and then changing the law into the nitty-gritty processes that allow the law to become a reality in the member states, and a reality for migrants, asylum seekers, in terms of processing times, etc. So I will take examples of past projects in order to illustrate the type of work that we can do with under this flagship. Now, taking the perspective of labor migration, which links to the talent pool, we helped in recent years the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic modernize their labor migration or labor mobility legislation. So there we help with legislation, inspiring new legislation with the best in class. In the case of the Czechs, who wanted to implement point-based systems, like we have in Canada, for example. So there we just looked at good practices in other countries, then proposed legislation and proposed tools to go with the legislation, because if we talk about labor migration and skills matching, obviously you need the tools to identify the missing skills. It can be digital tools, but let's say It also means going back to the public empowerment services, understanding how they identified the missing skills and how you could possibly match with skills of migrants. All that, when you go into the nitty-gritty, it's complex, and we can help from the legislative part into developing the tools and the operational aspects. Also related to talent, because demography is one of the challenges, and we've mentioned it, is just as way of example, we're helping Spain set up digital tool for matching skills gaps, skills that are needed in the labor market with skills of migrants in the country, in Spain, or skills of migrants that could come into Spain. This is about building the design of the digital tool, and the digital tool could be then purchased and developed with funds under the national budget or under the European migration funds. We are also working on digitalization of the Bulgarian asylum system. Digitalization is one thing, but when you do digitalization, you look at the processes that you want to digitalize, and you try to optimize those processes. So the two processes go together. Now, the pact will come with a massive financial support from the Commission, and we're also there to help member states absorb those funds by improving the monitoring of projects and, well, everything that has to be with funds management. Perhaps I will stop it there, considering the time, but we're there to help national administration, obviously regional administrations, because in the area of migration management, not everything happens at national level. The regions also play a role, often in employment policies, but the local entities also play a role, notably in the area of migrant integration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francesca. And indeed, as you said, this multi-regional, local level, multi-country is a very important feature of the TSI, so we couldn't have concluded in the best way. I thank you all for the very interesting presentations. Now I invite you to take your seats. We are about to close not only this presentation, but also the annual conference. We know that has been a lot of information. You have seen a QR code, so I invite you to download, and then you have more information to go through. And of course, our colleagues will still be around, so you can clarify last-minute questions, and we are happy to continue these exchanges with you. And yes, all good things come to an end. And that's exactly now that I would like to ask our director, Judith Roches, to take the floor and to wrap up this TSI annual conference. Please, Judith.
Thank you very much, Raquel. It's quite challenging to sum up such a rich 1.5 days of discussions. This annual conference give us the opportunity to reflect on the EU support for reforms at a moment when we are all thinking about the future. We are now well and truly past the halfway point of the 7-year multi-annual financial framework. And over the last 1.5 days, we managed to look back and also look to the future. So when looking back, we were focusing on mainly two things: the impact of reforms and the key success factors. We have heard how the TSI has proven effective in helping member states bring their vision to life, bridge technical gaps to fully implement EU policies, bolster productivity and innovation, improve quality of governance, public services, harness talents and skills, and close the implementation gap. In terms of key success factors, some examples highlighted by the stakeholders included political commitment, involvement of all relevant stakeholders, sufficient capacity to implement by the public administration, using evidence-based approaches, and of course using EU and international best practices and benchmarks. As we have looked forward, how the role of the EU could evolve in supporting member states deliver on their national reform agendas while facilitating the delivery of EU legislation. From the testimonies of the 14 member states who were with us and shared their testimonies in the discussions, it is clear that the EU must continue to support the capacity of member states in both in a horizontal way along all the public administration and also strengthening the capacity of member states to design and implement reforms both at national and subnational levels. In these 2 days, we have also seen a few but very telling examples out of the 1,800 projects that we have been implementing. And also it was touching to see on the video testimonies how, for example, we contributed to prevent wildfires in Portugal, or how we have helped children in several member states. What we saw on the video was in Romania and in Cyprus. So beyond this, the technical support could become a more systematic component of an integrated EU policy approach, building on the base of the current TSI along this idea of TSI by design. Technical support could also contribute to bring future member states more aligned with the EU reform agenda, develop their capacity to reform, and in general bring them closer to the EU member states through direct contacts with member states' counterparts. In these 2 days, we also launched the TSI 2025 and the amazing group of 15 flagship projects. I will not go into details again. We spent now the whole morning looking at them in detail. Now, looking at the next steps for the TSI, especially TSI 2025, as in the past cycles, we are now embarking on a series of national rollouts in the member states in order to go even more in detail, to explain more the specific flagships, have discussion with the member states on their national reform agendas, and initiate technical dialogues ahead of the October deadline for the submission of new requests. In parallel, we will also host a number of thematic sessions where DG Reform's experts will also clarify the content of the proposed flagships, as well as some areas which could be very interesting for creating multi-country projects with the involvement of several member states or regions. And the registration for all these events will open in the coming days and weeks, so please keep following the developments. Now, of course, at a more macro level, at a higher level, the EU institutions are also reflecting on the future of EU technical support in the context of the preparation for the new EU next multi-annual financial framework. And this will take shape over the next few months, and also obviously with a view of the next Commission coming in by the end of the year, before the end of the year. So to help us in these reflections, I want to encourage all of you to please give your views in the ongoing public consultation on the TSI midterm evaluation. This will really help us both deliver a good midterm evaluation, but also shape views more broadly across the EU in terms of the future of the TSI. I also encourage everyone to visit our website and contact us in DG Reform for more information. Whatever you need, the colleagues are always available. And also to contact the member state authorities, to contact the coordinating authorities in the member states. You can also go to them whether you are a national, regional, or local administration. And then now I come to the final part of my closing, which is about acknowledgements and thanks to several people and several contributors. So first of all, my first and biggest thanks go to our host, Commissioner Elisa Ferreira, and our Director General, Mario Nava, for their really enthusiastic engagement, and they were there with us all along the process of preparing the event, shaping the agenda, shaping the messages, so really big thanks for that. Then, of course, big thanks to all our speakers, all our panelists. for their precious contributions, including also our colleagues from different DGs and our very own colleagues from DG Reform. And if I may also, a very special thanks to Natalie and to Yanis, because you were on stage a lot these days and you have really been an engine of this conference. I also want to thank the member state coordinating authorities represented here in force. We are together with you in all this time, and the work will continue with you in the afternoon in a specific workshop. And the coordinating authorities, of course, play a huge role in ensuring the success of the TSI in all the member states. So really big thanks for the great ongoing collaboration with you. Now, also very big, huge thanks to the organizing team. So this involves, of course, Reform A4, so Roxanne, Georges, and all the colleagues who were there in preparation and on site to deliver really a truly fantastic and inspiring event. And these thanks are also extended to the TAIEX instrument and the TAIEX colleagues for bringing this event to life in such a beautiful and flawless way, I have to say. Even technically everything worked, so it's really wonderful. And finally, I would like to thank the many participants, both in person. In person, we were about 300 participants, 300 reformers, as the commissioner said. And online, we were 2,000 people following all or part of the event. So this is, I think, a huge success. And I have to say, one regret that I have is that we didn't have time for live Q&A in these days, because we had so much very precious inputs that we really had to share. But I have to reassure you that online we had a lot of questions, and all these questions were answered. And if there is any other question that you still have online, please don't hesitate to put them, and our colleagues will answer them very quickly. So just to really close, I really hope you enjoyed the conference. You take away a lot of interesting, inspiring facts, information, and thoughts, and look forward to working together to help member states design and implement reforms for a more resilient and sustainable future. And remember, together we are stronger.
Yeah, indeed, the moment now is to say goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen. So thank you so much for being with us these 2 days. Here and online, the numbers are really good, so very encouraging. You will find all and a lot of information in our website. You can continue following us in the social media. You have the hashtags. And also this event will be has been fully recorded, and you will have access to it very soon. So I conclude with the motto of this event. Together we are stronger. Have a safe return back home.